Let's get started.
Okay.
Okay, Act 1, which is who was Daniel, the where, what, when, why, or why, and all that other stuff, okay? Daniel was a prophet. He was taken from Jerusalem, where he lived and growing up, and he was taken as a prisoner to Babylon around 605 BC. We talked about that in a previous podcast in the, How Did Daniel End Up in Babylon podcast. We even talked about the history before that in the Donald Trump, the Cyrus, and the Jewish Temple Coin podcast. So those are all ones that people want to get a little more of the history behind all this. They can watch either one of those or both. That really help out.
I learned so much in that podcast. So I really hope
Super
people
fascinating.
go back and look at that.
So it's 605. Daniel, he's probably around 14 years old. He is now in Babylon. He is raised up to serve the palace. There's a whole bunch of stories in the Bible. Daniel 1 really talks about that. It's really, really interesting. But at this point, Daniel is he is serving the palace of the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. And he's going to serve the Babylonian palace through Nebuchadnezzar into a few other emperors or whatever you want to call them, or kings. And he's ultimately going to be in Babylon when Cyrus the Great, who is a Persian, when the Medo-Persian Empire takes over. So let's go through kind of some of the world history real fast. So Daniel's in Babylon. He's there all the way through Persia, the Medo-Persian Empire, which is the next empire that rises up after Babylon. It's called the Achaemenid Empire. I like to just call it the Medo-Persian because I can never say that word. So around 550 BC through around 330 BC, we have the Persian Empire. And again, that is what we would call modern day Iran, is the Persian Empire. And at that point, they kind of spread throughout kind of the known world. They had the Persian Empire spread from, Greece and Turkey all the way over to Pakistan, all the Middle East, and down into Egypt. Okay. They eventually fall to the Greek Empire. Remember Alexander the Great? So Alexander the Great rolls in and kind of like a blitzkrieg attack, takes out, over a period of just about 7 years, takes out the whole Persian Empire. And now Alexander is the leader of this basically entire world. In fact, he stretches all the way over into India. But he dies very, very young. Right. He only lasts for about 7 years when all this battle is going on. As soon as it's the height of his empire, he actually dies. And then we go into this next phase where we have the wars of the Diadochi begin. And all that means is successor. What happens after Alexander dies is they try to, for about a year, they try to keep this empire together. And they have one of his oldest children, but he's still very, very young, not old enough to be an emperor. They line him up with like a governor type of thing, a protectorate, to try to keep everything centralized and together until the kid's old enough to reign. That doesn't go very well. The kid's murdered, the whole family's murdered, and the whole thing breaks apart into the wars of the Diadochi, the wars of the successors. This goes on from about 322 to about 275 BC, and you've got multiple ebbs and flows of different regions fighting over each other. It tends to be like a Greek region, a Turkish region. I'm talking about modern day where the countries are today. And you might have like this where Iran and Iraq, Pakistan and Israel are today. That was kind of one region. And you had like this Egyptian region, and they were all just constantly fighting back and forth over control of Alexander's empire. That finally dies down around 275 BC with 4 basically world empires. And there's lots of, I think there's 4 major wars that go on in this 50 year or so time frame. And we end up, after all this the dust kind of settles, we have all the way up in Greece, we have a guy named Cassander, and he's running a new version of the Greek Empire. Then we have this guy Lysimachus, who is Turkey, modern day Turkey. And then the two we're going to focus on for the rest of the history part is we have this guy named Seleucus. He has kind of Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, all the way over to India. That whole stretch, he ends up taking over. And we have a guy named Ptolemy who takes over down in Egypt and Libya. And these are the kind of the four main empires that finally settles down and we land on. They tend to be, most of those guys were generals in Alexander's army. One of the dudes was more of like an administrator, like a politician, but a lot of the generals and politicians were all fighting and all this, and this is where we land in 275. Now the final thing we get set up is called the Syrian Wars, okay? And then I promise the history will be over. The Syrian Wars are about from 274 to 168 BC. The Syrian Wars are Seleucus and Ptolemy going at each other. That's the Israel over to India guy versus the Libya and Egypt guy. And they are constantly fighting, and you know where they always fight? It's right where what we call the Levant today, which is Israel, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, that stretch. They're always fighting right there, war after war after war after war. So that's a little bit of the history.
Now, what year again are we at?
Well, the Syrian War ends at 168 BC.
168, okay.
So we're going to get into each one of those a little bit more detail when we actually start to read what Daniel said in 11:2. In Daniel 11. I just bring up the main big points so that you can kind of get a vibe. We're going from, 550 BC or so all the way to 168 BC, and Daniel 11 is going to talk about all of it. It's absolutely insane.
Right. Okay.
So check out the accuracy of Daniel 11:2. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. Remember Persia, this is all the way back now to where Daniel's living right now, right? So Persia, the Persian Empire. There shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. Let's pause. Daniel wrote this, we didn't talk about this, Daniel wrote this probably around 536 BC. He likely died around 535 BC, 1 year later. None of this stuff had happened yet. After Cyrus the Great, who he does know, he lives for 1 year under the reign of Cyrus, okay? After Cyrus, we have this guy named Cambyses II. Then we have, I'm going to butcher the name, Bardia, who's also known as Guamada. And then we have Darius I. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, and he said here, there shall rise 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer. Well, guess who number 4 is?
Alexander.
Nope, Alexander's Greek. This is the 4th Persian king, is a guy by the name of Xerxes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah, and we all know Xerxes.
Xerxes.
Xerxes has been made popular in the movie 300.
Right.
Let me guess. You must be Xerxes.
Right, and do you know where else he was made popular?
And the One Night with a King.
Exactly right.
The story of Esther.
Esther, yep.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating how we portray this guy as like this crazy god king in 300. It's all stylized and war.
All the like adornments and all the Egyptian, like he looked like an Egyptian. I mean, it was like, and then in One Night with a King,
he's like
the story of Esther. Yeah, he's just very, like likes the ladies and,
Yep.
Very,
totally portrayed very differently.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And then he said, again, so Daniel said the 4th, Xerxes, shall be far richer, which he was he's known for his wealth. Mm-hmm. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. Well, that was the whole point of 300, right? Xerxes went to war against Greece, and we have the Battle of Thermopylae, and you have the 300 Spartans and King Leonidas, and it is absolutely spot on historically. It's absolutely incredible. Then Daniel 11:3 talks about Alexander the Great now. He says, then a mighty king shall arise that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, so like at the height of his kingdom shall be broken. Well, We died almost immediately. And shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven. Isn't it interesting? When we're done, we have the four areas, right? We have Greece, Turkey, we have the Seleucid Empire, and we have the Ptolemaic Empire. We got four major empires that came out of this. And it says right here, it shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides those. What it's saying there is, your own children will not rule in your kingdom. That's exactly what happened. His entire family was murdered during the war. It's basically at the very beginning of the war, the Diadochi. His family was killed. So another, Daniel's 11:3 and 4, 100% spot on. It's unbelievable. The child was Alexander the Fourth, and the mom was Roxana, and they were both killed in 310 BC. Then Daniel jumps right into, he doesn't get too much into the Diadochi war. He we talked about it just real briefly, but he kind of shoots over into the Syrian wars. And that is these wars between Seleucus and Ptolemy and their the people who come after them. Okay, these are long,
right,
hundreds of years long empires. So Daniel 11-5. This is where I'm going to start to move quickly, because we could really bog down here in the details, because it goes on and on and on about the king of the south doing this and the king of the north doing that. I'm going to be clear. The king of the north is the Seleucid Empire. Again, Israel over to India. Seleucus was the initial ruler of that. The other king of the south is the Egyptian king Ptolemy. Okay, so we can just keep those two separate. So if I kind of do like a real summary, then the king of the south shall be strong, Egypt shall be strong, and one of his princes shall be stronger than he. Seleucus, who runs that other empire, used to be a prince or one of the high-ranking officers of Ptolemy.
Okay.
So they were both down in Egypt. He goes to war, just Seleucus guy goes out to war in the Levant, and he ends up taking that whole region. So he ends up being far more powerful than Ptolemy. Again, spot on. After some years, they shall make an alliance. Then the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north. And again, I'm skipping over lots of stuff here, but they go to war. They'll be almost immediately, Seleucus and Ptolemy are going to battle, and they eventually have to have an alliance because everybody's dying. And so what happens is Ptolemy, the king of the south, offers up his daughter to Berenice, what I think was her name, offers to the king of the north, Seleucus, to have an alliance. Again, 100% spot on. He literally talks about the daughter of the king of the south in 535 BC, and this happened in like the 300 BC range. And we're already like 150, 200 years ahead of what Daniel. I mean, it's spot on. It's unbelievable.
Mankind recovers an abandoned, otherworldly spacecraft, answering the age-old question, do aliens exist? When military forces capture an inbound signal from deep space, it appears someone, or something, is returning. A long hidden web of lies and deceit begins to unravel at a Vatican observatory as a mysterious group guides the signal toward Earth. The Lucifer Project series is available on Amazon, and where great books are sold, visit theluciferproject.com for more information.
So then it moves on. I won't get into these details, but it talks about the king of north and the king of south and counterattacks and major victories and lands changing hands, and it's absolutely crazy. The point to all this is it's spot on. Daniel 11:20-24, it talks about this raiser of taxes. This is from the king of the north. He sent one of his people to raise taxes on the Jewish temple. And so we have Daniel's talking about this. A person shall arise who impose taxes on the glorious kingdom. Within a few days he shall be destroyed. Well, this guy ended up dying very quickly afterwards. And then it says, in this place shall rise a vile person. And we're going to get into this in a little bit, but that ends up being this guy by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes IV, who is ultimately tied to Hanukkah.
Right.
So much detail. The king of the north returns to the south, fails, turns on the Holy Covenant, defiling the temple and banning Jewish rites. Okay, that's all this stuff that Daniel talks about. It's just too much to read in detail. But what actually happened is Antiochus Epiphanes IV, he's ruling the Seleucid Empire at this point. He goes down to fight Egypt. This is the second time he's done this. He's conquering Egypt very well, which is a Ptolemaic Empire. Things are going really well for Antiochus. And then this new upstart empire by name of Rome has now signed an alliance with the Ptolemies. And so Antiochus comes down in his second war with the Egyptians, and now Rome's here, and this Roman envoy shows up out of the blue. And Antiochus, kind of a fun story, Antiochus was expecting like a real cordial, pleasant conversation with this. He's used to these politicians being real nice to each other. And this guy's having none of it from Rome. He says, go back, leave immediately. And Antiochus is like, well, let me think about it. Antiochus knows he really can't go to war with Rome. Rome is powerful at this point. They're new, but they're also very, very powerful. And he's definitely scared of them. And the Seleucids and the Ptolemies have been fighting for so long, neither one of them are very powerful anymore. And so Rome could easily wipe him off. So he's like, I got to be careful here. So he's like, let me go back and talk to my advisors. And the guy this Roman envoy takes his staff and he draws a circle in the sand around Antiochus. And he says, give me an answer to give to the Roman Senate before you leave that line in the sand. And that's basically where a lot of people believe we got this line in the sand thing, that our president's like, put a line in the sand here. Well, that's kind of where that came from. Don't know if it's true or not. And so Antiochus is like, he knows he's going to lose this one. Right. He's got to fight Ptolemies and Rome. There's no way he can do it. So he's angry. And so he has to kind of bow down and leave. So he has to end his Egyptian campaign and he has to go all the way back home. And again, he's got that, what we know now as Iraq, Iran, that's his territory, right? And so to get there, you always go through Jerusalem. That's just how the geography works out. So Antiochus goes back through, there's little Judah, there's little Jerusalem. He's on his way home, he's very angry, and he starts to kick the cat. He gets into Jerusalem, he's like, screw all you Jews. I mean, I'm kind of joking a little bit here, but like he was really, really angry. And so he went into the Jewish temple, and he did what the Bible calls the Abomination of Desolation, where he sets up a altar to Zeus. He bans all the Jewish practices, the temple sacrifice and all that stuff. And of course, now the Jewish people are furious, and that spawns a revolt we now know of called the Maccabean revolt. And ultimately, the Maccabean revolt is successful. They're able to beat off Antiochus's forces. They take back the Jewish temple. When they get in there, there's only 1 day's worth of consecrated oil to cleanse the temple. They need 8 days, if I think I have this right? And they're like, well, just start burning it anyways. We'll start making new consecrated oil. It's going to run out, whatever. Anyways, it doesn't. It lasts that oil lasts for the whole 8 days before they're able to get some new consecrated oil back in. And that is celebrated today as Hanukkah. Right? So Daniel, he talks about this entire thing. Talks about the king of the north defiling the temple, banning Jewish rites. He wrote this in 536 BC. Right. This what we just talked about, this whole thing was 168 BC. We're talking like 400 years ahead. So it's absolutely stunning. Won't get into it anymore. The point behind Daniel 11 is it is 100% spot on, accurate, so accurate that it brings us to Act 2.